Hi guys, so episode 5 of Bates Motel was on last night and it was really exciting because we're finally seeing the events of the film starting to play out in this version of Psycho. So I'm going to start with a recap of the episode and then I'm going to talk about the similarities of the movie. So Norman, as we saw in the last episode, he seemed to black out and turn into a mother again. So this is where we see him waking up, and it's kind of like the aftermath of whatever went on during the night. So he wakes up and he's got like a mother of a hangover, haha. So he's trying to figure out like why is he feeling like that, what happened, and he hasn't seen Psyche Norma. So he's wondering what happened, and he finds a card, and it's for a bar. But in the meantime, the sheriff, I think her name's Sheriff Green, she calls him in to talk to him about Romero. We actually don't see Romero in this episode, but last time we saw him, he ended up at Maggie's house, and don't really know where that's gonna go, so we'll find out. Anyway, so she's questioning Norman, like, did he have any friends? Does he have any idea where he could possibly be? And Norman's not very good at being subtle and everything, and his answers kind of give off like you know, kind of like, oh, it's hard to explain. He's just not very good at lying to the sheriff, but so that's basically all that happens with the sheriff in this episode, just talking about Romero. So we actually finally see Dylan and Emma again. Their couple name is Dilemma. So they actually do deal with a lot in this episode. So Emma finds an earring in a little envelope, and this earring was actually found by Dylan back at the motel because Emma's mother was staying there. And if you guys have seen the previous season, she was staying there and then she went to go talk to Norman, and what happens is Norman was mother when he was talking to her, and he was filled with rage about how she left Emma and was a really bad mother and managed to kill her. So Dylan has had a suspicion that Norman killed Emma's mother. And he later actually tells her in the episode his suspicions about Norman, and he even goes back to, I believe it was season 1, when the teacher was found dead, and Norman had actually killed her, and he was just a suspect at the time. And he managed to pass the lie detector test, which makes sense because he doesn't realize that he's killing. That's the way his psyche is working. So anyway, Emma gets really mad about this, and she just doesn't want to hear it. But at the same time, she's kind of wondering if maybe this is all true. So at one point, she's looking up Bates Motel on the internet, and she finds an article about Norma's death. So that's going to lead into Dylan finally finding out and confronting Norman about that. So it looks like that's probably going to be in the next episode. So yeah, that was their dilemma this episode. So back to Norman. He calls the bar where he has the card from, and he learns that Norma left the car at the bar, so that's why it's not at the house. So he calls Madeline, or Madeline calls him, I can't remember what it was. So they're talking, and she's apologizing for everything, but then she offers to actually help him get the car back, so she'll drive him there and everything. So in the car, they're talking, and Madeline's really, she's the one who feels foolish about the previous night, how they almost got together, had an affair. But, like, Norman's trying to tell her it's not her fault, and he thinks she should talk to her husband. And this actually kind of gets her wondering, what does that mean? And so what happens is he actually ends up telling her that he saw Sam at his motel with another woman. And this gets her really mad because, one, she never suspected this. Two, Norman waited till now to tell her, and Norman explains like he didn't feel like it was his place and he hardly knew her, which in some ways is understandable. It's kind of a hard topic to bring up. But Madeline gets very mad and she yells at him to get out of the car and drives off. So, yeah. I think that relationship kind of ended there for now. So Norman's at the bar. He talks to the bartender, and the bartender recognizes him because clearly Norman is the one who goes in, but just with a different persona. So the bartender's confused and wondering, like, aren't you Norma? Why are you acting this way? That kind of thing. But he doesn't really go into it with Norman, just questions him, like, are you okay? That kind of thing. So Norman starts to get suspicious about this, like, why is everybody seeing me like this? And at one point he's driving the car back to his home and he stops at an intersection and he sees the psychiatrist who was helping him in the last season. I can't remember his name, so yeah, just we'll call him the psychiatrist. So they actually have a coffee, and the doctor is trying to apologize. Like, he's saying he feels like it's his fault that Norman wanted to leave, and he wonders if he did something wrong. He thinks he pushed Norman too far. And at that moment, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, you kind of did. So the doctor actually kind of brings up these things like, remember what I told you? And Norman remembers, and he says that he becomes his mother, and sometimes he just sees her and talks to her. And this has him realizing, like, he's actually starting to realize maybe there's something going on. So that later leads him to go back to the bar at nighttime, and people are recognizing him, but not as Norman, but his other persona. So this starts to freak him out. He goes into the bathroom, and this guy comes in, and he's kind of flirting with him, and we realize Norman had an affair with this guy, but as Norma. And this gets complicated and a little disturbing, but so Norman's really freaked out, and he runs out, and he goes home, and he seems to, I get the feeling he's back to Mother, but I'm not positive. It seems like whenever his mind can't handle the truth, that's when his Mother persona comes in. It's like it's a way of getting him to forget about that. Just kind of like a distraction, a protection. So yeah, Norman's mind just gets more and more complicated. But here's where the exciting part of the episode is. We are finally introduced to Marion, the female lead from the movie Psycho. And she is played by Rihanna, and I loved her introduction. It basically jumped right into the scenes from the movie. She's having the affair with Sam, she's with him, and she wants to go live with him, and she actually doesn't know that he's married. So she and Madeline are both clueless about what's going on. And that's where things are gonna get complicated, I'm positive, because, well, Marion wants to go be with Sam, but Sam's married, and the only thing he can do to keep her clueless is to lie to her, and he's gonna have her meet him at Bates Motel, which is where they had their affair in an earlier episode. So that was her. That was confirmed. So, besides that, we see Marion's life, her work, which again follows the movie. She's I can't remember what she is. It'll come to me, but probably after this video. Anyway, she wants a raise, or at least a new higher position, but her boss is just not going to hear about it, and he treats her very poorly. So when she's given the money to put into the bank, she decides to take the money. So that's where that leads her to go to where Sam is. And while she's driving, another famous scene comes up where a cop pulls her over because her coat is hanging out of the trunk and covering her license plate. So he just fixes it, but it really makes her nervous because, oh God, is he going to find the case of money? Thankfully he doesn't, but as soon as he fixes her coat, she just drives right off. So she's on her way to most likely her doom. But yeah, Sam's he's slime. He's a sleazeball in this version. And that's really interesting that they actually made it that way. Because in the original, he supposedly wasn't married, and he seemed more innocent, like he really loved Marion, and she was the only one for him. So, I don't know how that's gonna go. But I think what's gonna happen is, well, what happened was, now that Madeline knows, she's not taking this anymore. She immediately goes up to Sam after he talks with Marion on the phone, and she's like, so what's her name? And we know that that's going to be an ugly fight or something. I wonder, this is a theory I have, I wonder if Sam is going to do something to Madeline, like if he's going to murder her or something, or this might lead her to run to Norman and he will end up killing her. I don't know. There's too many possibilities, especially when stories are being rewritten. But yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. And I'm actually mad because Marion is going to her death because Sam is lying to her, not because of love, but because of a lie. So her death is going to be even more in vain, which really, that kind of makes me mad. But I also have a theory, maybe she might not die in this version. Just a theory. Just because maybe Madeline was put in here for a reason, not just to make Sam a more despicable character, but maybe she's the one who's going to die instead. I don't know. Although, I feel like it's a very far-fetched theory, we'll see. Like I said, they like to change things, so. So another relation to the movie that I noticed, when Norman was driving his car, and he stops at an intersection, and that's when he sees the psychiatrist walking across the street, and they both recognize each other. That moment was taken directly from the movie, except it was Marion who was driving away with the money. She stops at an intersection, and I forgot if it was her boss or the guy that was wanting the money deposited. He sees her in the car at the intersection, and he waves at her, and it's all friendly, but then he's suspicious of her, and then she just drives off. But that scene was basically recreated, but for Norman. And obviously played out differently, but I'm positive it was a Psycho shout-out that they wanted to have a little twist on. So I'm really liking all of these Psycho relations all of a sudden. Because we had like a minimal amount in the previous seasons, because obviously it was all the origin story, but this season is basically Psycho revisited. So it's really cool to see what they're doing with it. And I'm very excited to see where it's going. It's actually very intense, and it's keeping us on the edges of our seats because we don't know, even though we know it's going to happen, at the same time, we don't really know because, like I said, they changed some things. But we actually didn't see Psyche Norma in this episode at all, which actually worked really well for Norman's character because we can see how he's feeling the weight of the truth by not seeing her. And that's what's causing his problems. But it looks like we're going to see her in the next episode, which is actually titled Marion, so it's going to be, I'm guessing, all about Marion's interaction with Norman, so that'll be interesting. We didn't see Chick this episode, or Romero, like I said, so it's going to be interesting to see how they get back into the story, because it was actually interesting. I felt more connected without seeing their characters, but I think they're going to weave them in there to where it will work really well, so I'm really excited to see that. Okay, I think that's all I have today. It's not tonight. So yeah, if you guys watched the episode, I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. Alright, I'm gonna finish here, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.